got a compare and contrast going on in today's episode of Rainer on Leadership. I wasn't doing wedding ceremonies in the 1990s, but my father was. So, and Dad, you're not doing many wedding ceremonies now.
No, I'm hearing about a lot of funerals these days, but not doing a lot of wedding ceremonies.
It is that season of life for you. So, yeah, how are wedding ceremonies different than they were in the 1990s? A little bit of a fun episode.
These are generalizations too, but they have. I think they're pretty dramatic in the change. Listening, especially to other pastors, and even specifically to you and Jess, I think that they have changed dramatically as a rule. There's some exceptions that are there. So, absolutely.
I would agree. And before we get into the content, we want to thank our sponsor, which is Tyndale. Tyndale's been with us a long time. They're a partner. They're not necessarily a sponsor. They're a partner. And they want you to know that moms are amazing. And I want you to know that moms are amazing. My mom is amazing. And here's a really good idea for a gift for your mother: the Dayspring Daily Devotional Bible for Moms. Created for real moms, not fake moms, real moms with real life joys. I see that in the copy. These are not fake moms. These are real moms. So what is it? It's the Dayspring Daily Devotional Bible for Moms. This really is a great gift for your mom: birthday, Mother's Day, Christmas, Easter, whatever it is, or just a surprise. That's what you should do.
I think I'm going to get that for Nellie Joe. I really do.
Yeah. It looks good.
It'll be a surprise, I can tell you. You know how many times
Aaron
listen to my podcast?
Yeah, and they've got a great website, BibleForMoms.com. So, like, where do I get this? BibleForMoms.com. Great URL. Tyndale team, good pick there. So again, it's the Dayspring Daily Devotional Bible for moms. It's just awesome. So we would encourage you to go pick it up. We love the New Living Translation, and we love moms. So that's why you should go get the Dayspring Daily Devotional Bible at BibleForMoms.com. All right, Dad. Weddings. Wedding ceremonies in particular. So we're really just narrow in on like the wedding ceremony. We could talk about counseling and all that stuff around the wedding and what marriage is and what marriage is not. That's a whole nother topic. What I just want to talk about is the ceremonies that we do are completely different, because I remember you complaining regularly about having to do wedding ceremonies. Now, I don't mind them as much. And I think part of the reason is because they've just changed. They've changed, like you said earlier, like pretty dramatically since the 1990s.
Some weddings are still pretty elaborate. I've seen some data recently. I'm not going to try to cite it or even recall the numbers, but basically here is a typical price of a wedding. And, you know, there's some of them are still pretty expensive, but they're not measuring the weddings. It just, hey, we want to get married. We're going to have a few people over. Let's do that. That was really uncommon in my era. We tended to have the bigger weddings, it was more consistent that you had expensive weddings rather than what I see today, where it can vary church to church, pastor to pastor, marriage to marriage. The weddings that I officiated where I was a pastor were really, really elaborate. Now, back to my complaining, just a little bit of clarity. When I complained, it was the year that I had almost 40 weddings, or maybe I hit 40 weddings. And we had a lot of young people in our church, a lot of young people getting married. It was very rare for someone to use our church as a wedding ceremony place. These were our own people, and we were just having a lot of people get married. So there was an expectation from what the previous pastor did, who had far fewer weddings, that he would show up for the wedding rehearsal, the wedding rehearsal dinner, the pictures before the wedding, the ceremony itself, the pictures after the wedding, and the reception, usually from beginning to end. About Dad.
I mean, I don't do any of that stuff. So, I mean, I don't do any of that. I have wedding ceremonies. We go out on the beach, we say I do, and we done. That I've had more wedding ceremonies where people are like, "Hey, we're just going to stop by your office on a Monday afternoon. We're just going to get married." Um, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that people are just living together now when they shouldn't be,
Yeah.
before they get married. That's like everybody now, and they come to this realization of, know what, we should probably do this correctly. And I'm always like, yes, yes, you should. So I require counseling. So I end up most of my time is on the counseling, like the premarital counseling side of things, than is the actual ceremony. For me, at least where we are in Florida, the ceremonies tend to be very stripped down, very quick. Although there is a movement of young people now where let's make this as elaborate and big and expensive as possible. So it's almost like you had more just the weddings were very similar for
They
you.
were very
They're
similar.
very time consuming. They all kind of looked the same. They were not very personalized, very traditional. Now you've got the weddings that are, the ceremonies that are just, hey, we need to get married and we want to do it the right way. It's like awesome. They don't spend a lot of money. They just want me there to officiate something, just something with family. I've done a ton of those. Um, and there's that extreme, and then the other extreme is just this huge thing. So I think that weddings today are either very inexpensive and not elaborate, or big and huge and grander than anything you ever did in the 90s. You had a lot that were all very similar in
Don't
in
get
their approach.
married in the South in the fall on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, nobody should do that. That's football day. um so
You got to have you got to have them some other time. I mean,
so, so
it's
I will say premarital counseling is more important than ever.
it
um
is, and I did not do that at all. I outsourced it.
you know, well, you were so busy with the ceremony. I mean, you didn't have time for premarital.
Well, I was incompetent to do marital counseling. I mean, I could read a book and read it back to them, and I could ask them spiritual issues, which are important, but some of the things that they needed to talk about before they got married, because as far as I knew, most of those that were married under my tutelage were people that had just said, I don't really understand marriage. I don't know anything about it, but I want to do it the Christian way. They weren't living together. They that's how I remember them anyway. Maybe I'm living in somewhat of a fantasy world of what was going on then, but that's how I remember them. And some of the weddings I did, I still have people today talk to me and say, "You remember that ceremony?" Yeah, I've tried to forget, but I remember it, particularly if it was on a Saturday afternoon in the fall in the South.
So there are far more people. By the way, you've got delayed marriage, you've got divorces, you've got blended families. I think to a much greater degree today than you did in the
Probably so.
1990s.
True.
So there's more people who are getting married who are older. I still do weddings for 22-year-olds that, hey, we just graduated college, we met in college, we need premarital counseling, we're going to get married. That was a very common story in the 1990s. It's less common now because people are delaying marriage. So what you end up with is, hey, we've been living together for 5 years. We're 32 years old. We have two kids.
Hmm. That's
And
true.
we just want to get married. And I love those conversations. I don't necessarily like how the people got to that point, but it almost always is prompted by the Holy Spirit working in their life and convicting them of, what marriage really is, which is a covenantal relationship, and them wanting to do things correctly. So I've learned not to demean or denigrate anybody that's in that situation, because they tend to be wanting to get to a better place. And I've kind of got this saying at my church: if you're going to walk in the right direction, I'll walk with you. Like
Hmm.
if you want to move, even if you're moving slowly, if you're moving in the right direction, I'll move with you. So there are people who have delayed marriage. There are people who have gone through some pretty awful divorces. There are people who are now blending families. And in my case, there's senior adults who are deciding, widowers and widows who want to get married. They meet somebody, they're of age, but they they want to get married. I've done a few of those ceremonies as well. So I guess what I'm saying is, at least in Florida, my experience is there is a wide variety of people getting married relative to what was happening in the 1990s, which tended to be more, hey, we're early 20s, mid 20s,
It was so
and
true.
it's time for us to get married.
And there's a lot of variety of everything in Florida. It's just a weird state. I mean,
It's so bizarre and weird, and I fit right in. I love it here.
it is a great state. Now, you don't do many of the rehearsals or rehearsal dinners, I assume. That's just not on your list anymore.
I'm very specific that I don't go to those things.
But
Um,
some of the ceremonies are preceded by them the day before.
Frankly, it'd be very rare for there to be a rehearsal dinner now. It's honestly rare to do a rehearsal because of the way that we do weddings at my church. I mean, it's not really necessary. I've done a few. I've done a few. If the family knows that there's going to be several hundred people there, we tend to do a rehearsal, and I might show up quickly at the rehearsal just to make sure that whoever's managing the ceremony, because I don't do that. I tell them, like, I'm not managing this thing. I am not your wedding manager person. We have somebody on our team who does that, and I'm glad that I don't have to. So we actually ask for payment to have somebody if you want somebody to manage everything, that's a payment that comes to the church, and we have somebody in the church who actually enjoys doing that and puts it all together. So I'm
I have, I
very
have
rarely at rehearsals or dinners.
my clearest memory of a rehearsal dinner was what your grandmother did. My mother.
Ooh, your mother,
Yeah.
Nana.
Nana. My mother.
What did Nana do?
Well, I was co-officiating a wedding, and the pastor who was the other part of the wedding, I had not met him. He came from out of town. His friend from one of the people in the wedding. It's a family member, and they wanted him there. And at least from my mother's perspective, he was one of the most boisterous, arrogant people she had ever heard. And the more she listened to him, he was at our table, of course. The more she listened to him, the more she began to voice that to him. She started off by saying, "Well, you're a bit boisterous, or you're a really kind of rowdy guy," kind of in a joking way. But it ended up by saying, "You're one of the most arrogant people I've ever known,"
Hmm.
to the other pastor. It was an awkward moment, but then
I love awkward. I would have loved to have been there. I get that from Nana.
yes,
She
she
she loved those awkward, humorous moments.
yeah she created them, and she said, "You're the most arrogant person I've ever known." She drops the microphone and says, "I'm going to the restroom. I'll meet you in the car, Tom."
All right then. That's hilarious.
He's looking at me. I'm looking at him. I, I'm not going to apologize. If you want to go make it right, you go make it right. But I was in a lot of rehearsal dinners. That's changed significantly over the years. Changed significantly over the years.
Yeah,
Uh,
I might go to a reception after the wedding.
mhm.
That tends to be a little more common, but a rehearsal dinner is pretty rare now. Now,
I,
hey,
I,
chime in if you're watching this on YouTube. Put in the comment section if you're somebody who officiates weddings and you have a different experience than I do. I'd love for you to talk about that. I mean, I'm just really we're really talking more anecdotally. We don't have a research project behind this. It's just more kind of experience. But I bet there's a lot of pastors who kind of relate to what I'm doing now, more so than what you did in the '90s. There's also fewer weddings that take place in the church sanctuary. I mean, that
yeah.
used to be a really big deal. You would find that church with the center aisle. We don't have a center aisle. I still hear
Oh,
that
I got,
from
I got
some
to tell you a
people.
story about that. So hold that. Continue thinking, and I'll hold that thought about the center aisle.
Yeah, so you're looking for that beautiful church with the center aisle, and you've got the dress picked out, and there's a lot of formalities to things. Which, by the way, if that's what you want to do, I think that's wonderful. I mean, my wedding with my wife was like that. It was this big thing.
It
So if that's
was. I wish I could have remembered her name.
it was yeah, that's a whole hilarious moment because you did 3 weddings in 11 months, and you just accidentally called my wife my sister-in-law's name, and it was awesome. It's one of my favorite memories of you is being on my wedding day, hearing you call Erin Sarah.
Sarah. And then your
And
wife saying, "My name's Aaron."
yeah. We still talk about that, by the way. And
Yes.
it's a fond memory. She is not angry at all. It's just something that makes us smile. Anyway, back to the point. There are fewer weddings that take place in church sanctuaries. Um, it's just I do a lot of weddings on the beach. I've done weddings at different parts of the church campus, not even necessarily in the sanctuary. I always like try to encourage people like let's go into the sanctuary. Why do you want to do it in the commons area? Like it's just part of where people are right now. So I think in your era, at least in the 1990s, I think it was far more common for people to want to have a wedding in the church and in the church sanctuary.
High demand, high demand. But here's my anecdote. Just talking about the center aisle. I was talking with Todd Brown. I don't know, probably 2.5, 3 years ago. It's been a while. So what's changed in building churches? We know what's changed because of COVID. We know all those kind of issues. We know that we're moving more to larger foyers, downsizing of some of the worship center sanctuaries. But then one thing that I didn't even think of, he said, we don't have as many people asking for a center aisle anymore when they build a sanctuary. Had not thought about that, because weddings that were really one of the drivers behind the center aisle, the only one was one of the drivers, they're not coming there as much anymore. And they're okay coming in at a little bit of an angle instead of center aisle, whatever the case may be. So I had not thought about that, but he said that's one of the trends that we're seeing directly related to the wedding. So you talk about people who know facilities, Brown, they do, and you can ask him something like that, and he tied it right back into what we're doing right now.
Yeah, Brown Church Development Group knows their stuff. By the way, churchfacilityexpert.com is where to go to learn more about them. We'll
Love that
we'll put a
URL.
yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes so that you can go check them out as well. Last thing, I think that photos and videos have become far more epic
Oh,
with
it's an
weddings.
industry into itself that's been
I love it.
augmented by the drone industry.
Drones, better cameras, technology is less expensive. The cameras enable people who aren't quite experts to be able to do it and do it well enough. Listen, photography has made leaps forward. Video has made leaps forward since the 1990s, and I know there's probably some photographers who bemoan that, who are like, yeah, they can tell like these are not professionally done. But for most people, and I listen, I feel you on that. The craftsmanship and the art and the artistry behind a good
Sure.
photo. I hear you. I hear you. But there's no denying the ubiquitous nature of technology now with cameras everywhere, and just how good these cameras are. And now, more recently, in the last few years, with drone technology, I mean, you can make. I mean, you would have to hire a helicopter at your wedding to get in the 1990s to get some of this footage that people get now with a relatively inexpensive drone. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty epic. And so I think where parts of the ceremony have fallen away, the formalities and the expensive dress, although I'm sure some people still do that, where we have increased is with like recording the event and just making it so epic and so big, and these videos that can be edited in such a way that really capture the moment. I think this is a positive development. If it had been available for my wedding in 2006, I totally would have done it. It would have been a lot of fun. So I do think that how about this? A few less formalities and more fun with weddings might be the way to
Possibly.
describe that.
But I got to tell you,
Um,
Sam, I hate drones.
well, I'm not a huge fan either. If they are intrusive, like if they're
Mine is intrusive. You know,
your drone.
my experience with drones. My house, you're very familiar with it.
Yeah.
Backyard, wooded, leading to the river. You're in the backyard. Usually, neighbors might could see you, but if you're in a certain place, they don't see you. And I didn't mind that. I just went to the bathroom every now and then in the backyard.
Not anymore.
I looked up one time. I heard something go like that. I got drones now.
If you own that footage, please post it to YouTube. I will
I don't
share it
think
on
they got me. I
my
don't
social
think they got
media.
me. I think I was considering. I'm almost sure, but I can't anymore. I have my own wooded backyard leading to a river, and now a drone runs through it.
So, um,
That's my
that's
story.
that is a story full of TMI, as the kids say. Too
Yeah, I
much
think
information.
Jess told you would need to watch me a little more closely these days as I age, because he babysits me on our sister podcast, Church Answers podcast.
Listen, you're right there with my two boys who are 8 and 9 years old. I catch them just peeing in the backyard all the time, so you just fit right into my family.
I guess so. It's a little bit different story with me. Hey, before we go, this has been fun. It's been a fun podcast. Before we go, I want to talk about Upward because
Big announcement.
it's
This is like, listen carefully. This is a big announcement. This is huge. This is like one
it,
of the biggest sponsor announcements we've ever made.
and it is because of the impact that it's having and the breadth of the impact. And man, it's huge. It started off in the baby boomer world, but it's expanded. But we'll talk about it. When you think about Upward, you're thinking about bringing sports to your church, bringing leagues to your church. You're talking about soccer, cheerleading, basketball, flag football, volleyball, baseball, and running. You know, yours. Now, does this sound like a drum? Is that a drum sound?
I can't hear it, but sure, I'll run with it.
Okay, I'm making a drum sound. And the announcement is coming to Upward. Their newest sport is pickleball. Woo! Wow. I tell you what, that is a sport that is growing in popularity for all ages. And now you can capture that by letting Upward come to your church, help you to run a pickleball ministry and reach your community maybe like never before. If it, they'll show you how to do it. It'll be great.
This is terribly exciting. Pickleball is huge here in Florida. It's big everywhere. Your church should capture this now. Go do this now because you could be first to market with a pickleball ministry. And I bet it pays off in big ways. So upward.org/church answers. Again, upward.org/church answers is where you can go to connect with Upward. Reach out to them and say, I heard you got pickleball. The Rainers said you've got pickleball. I want pickleball, and I want pickleball right now.
I
That's
want to
what you
get
should
it in
do.
my church, in my community right this second. Give them a call. Let them know.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today's episode. We've got another one coming out here shortly. Give us a thumbs up on the YouTubers and give us a rating or a review in your podcasting app. And hey, if you've got some comments on how you're seeing wedding ceremonies today, put them in the chat. If you're on YouTube, we'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you soon.